We are a town-run operation. It's a shellfish hatchery. The idea is to grow as many shellfish as possible. We do oysters, clams, and scallops. And here what we do is we grow most of the crop for one season. So we'll start early. Our hatchery season starts really early, like February. We start our spawning, so we're getting a jump start on the natural season. So we're starting really early, and the idea is to get the seed up to as large a size as possible, as quickly as possible, so that when we seed it, it'll survive.
The shellfish farm that we're visiting today is run by the East Hampton Town government. It's a municipal shellfish farm. Today the plan is for them to better understand how shellfish are grown and how they replenish the bottom for sustainable purposes.
See they're swimming up a little bit.
We saw at the nursery were...
Same one. So you can see they're swimming up, so obviously they can swim. Also they have eyes. So if you take a really close look at them, you can see the little blue dots on the edge here are their eyes. See them?
Wow.
They have 28 pairs of eyes. How many is that? So you can put your fingers in these containers, play with some scallops. Maybe if you hold them, usually if you hold them near the surface, they'll open up. You can see those eyes, especially in the sunlight. They're like little blue jewels. These scallops came out of these things that are called pearl nets. And these were developed by over in Asia for growing pearl oysters, hence the name pearl nets. So we stock them into these nets and float them out on those buoy strings. So these get stocked at about 500 per net. And then 2 weeks later we'll come back, we'll dump them into these totes and then reduce the density to about 250 per net. And then 2 weeks later, which is now, we'll take them out and then restock them into either more of these nets at a lighter density or into these bags. End of September. These guys will be double or triple the size. They grow like crazy. And then we'll keep them over the winter in that little pond you came by called Pond of Pines. Or some people call it eel pond. We'll keep some in here. What we do for the winter time is sink them to the bottom so that they don't get iced over. And they'll survive very well through the winter, and then in the spring we'll pull them back up, and then we seed them in the spring. So the next time you're eating oysters, take a look at the cup on it. If it's got a nice deep cup, then it's going to have more meat. So it's better. It makes the shell a little harder, and for those that are farming or trying to grow their own oysters for their own consumption, you want to develop a nice deep cup. We're going to go over to our oyster grow out cages. We're going to pull some oysters, dump the bags out, show the folks, and then we'll actually seed them on the way back.
We had the pleasure of meeting Barley at a summer camp run by Sofo, so I followed up with him to ask him if I could take the young environmentalists here. And here we are.
So this here is called a colonial tunicate. Again, it's one of the weeds that we need to deal with. These are hydroids, little plants. So as you can imagine, again, these animals are filter feeders, so they need to rely on water passing through these bags. Right. So I'm sure you guys saw all the bags that were on the barge. We had different size mesh bags. Why?
Different sizes.
Different size animals. We want to put the animals in the largest size mesh as possible so that they get the most water flow. When were these born? These are actually last year's seeds. So these are a year and a half. Year and a half, yeah. So you can see this one has a pretty nice cup. This one you could eat this. It's a nice size. I'd shuck it
Throw
for
them,
you.
please.
You can.
Oh, like
That's all right. They're tough. As you can see, I dumped them in.
Don't throw them.
So you got some various sizes, various shapes. That's the beautiful thing about oysters is they don't all look the same, as opposed to clams, which are all pretty much homogeneous. It's kind of like growing rocks. This is the hinge where the blade is.
Lucas,
There's a little gap there, and there's a ligament. You put your blade into that gap and that ligament, and give it a little twist. And you'll see the shell separate, right? You see a little gap there? So then you push the blade up right along the top shell and cut the muscle. But the way the shell is designed is that when the muscle relaxes, the shell opens. So the job of the muscle is to keep the shell closed, because if it relaxes, it opens. So that's when you find shells on the beach, they're always open, right? So that's because there's no muscle in there. So here you have the mantle, which is the organ that lays down the new shell. The gills here.
Are the gills edible?
Yeah, the whole thing is. You haven't had a raw oyster yet?
No.
Oh, you might have to start today.
Raw?
The gills, the mantle, and here's the mouth parts down here by the hinge. This is the gonad and the stomach. So to shuck it, you finish the muscle cutting. And there's
There's the plate. And
That's how they serve
That's
it.
a raw oyster.
That's it.
beautiful.
You're gonna eat it. It's good for you.
So, and the heart is right here. And actually, it's still beating.
Oh my God.
See it?
Ollie, would you eat it?
See it?
Yeah.
Come on over.
Oh
Wait,
my
what if you
God.
eat it and it's still beating?
Is that too much information?
That's great.
That's how you know it's fresh.
That's a fresh oyster right there.
Still
It's called
beating.
eating something alive.
Fresh as it can come.
How is it still beating?
Keep beating.
Good question. I'm surprised it's still going, to be honest with you.
It's a special thing for today.
I think it. I don't
When
know.
was the last time you filmed
Sounds like a- sounds
oyster
like a
heart
thesis
beating,
for a
Angel?
graduate student.
First time.
So Frank, if you have a
All right, who wants to eat this?
Ollie, you want to eat
million
it?
oysters here.
Ollie will eat
Freshest
it.
oyster, the majority. Yeah, they'll pretty
many?
much
Doing it.
You're a commercial
Come on,
fisherman.
Sam.
Town is giving
Come
out
on.
Sam.
oysters to harvest for
It's
livelihood.
to do it, yeah.
I'm gonna go and harvest all.
All right, so to answer
Can you feel
your
the
pearl
heart
question,
beating?
Yes.
the way the pearl oyster feeds is it's sitting on the bottom. This is the inhalant side.
Okay.
So the water flows in this side, and it uses its gills and its mantle to march all those food particles down to the mouth parts. And there's obviously going to be some stuff floating in the water that it doesn't want, right? So it can select down here at its mouth parts. It'll actually select all the stuff that it's marching down to its mouth. And there's videos of this on YouTube you can find. It'll select from those parts. It'll reject the ones that it doesn't want, and you'll actually see that if you come out to our hatchery in our tanks. You can see that as like a string. We call it pseudo feces. It's not really poop, but it's kind of poop because it's rejected food. So anything they don't want, they reject, and anything they want, they'll ingest it, process it, and then poop out this side. Who wants another one? Ooh, girl.
Go for it.
That's
Yeah.
it. Beautiful. Yay! All right.
Toss the shell. Do the honors. Another super cool thing. This oyster, which is about 3 inches, can filter 50 gallons of water a day.
Wow.
How many gallons?
50.
50. One oyster.
Seeding is a very high-tech procedure.
Listen up, guys. High tech.
We drive to our seeding areas, and we throw them overboard. That's
Do
seeding.
it right.
Can we see today?
It's a job I could.
But no, that leads me to a point, because this oyster, these guys have no ability to move whatsoever. Whereas clams retain their foot, they can burrow up and down, they can
Scallops.
scallops can swim. Oysters have no ability to move after their larval stages and they set to the bottom. So it's very important for us to put these oysters on a hard bottom, preferably a rocky bottom or like a hard pan sand bottom, so that they won't end up buried, because if they get buried, what's going to happen?
Are we gonna be doing
Answer the
some seeding
question.
today?
Yes, sir.
Answer the question. If they get buried, what will happen?
if they get buried, then they're gonna stay buried.
Yes.
Stay buried in what? Suffocate.
Sediment.
Suffocate, yeah. Be very careful, don't get cut. Just grab them. I actually got cut, so
Just start seeding.
Yeah,
Nice and easy.
Let's have one.
Grab like
toad
3
on
or
each
4 at a
side.
time. It's 50,000 gallons of water that these oysters are going to filter in one day. And that basically is part of the cleaning, the natural filtration and cleaning of the environment, which creates a better water quality for this area. Oysters, shellfish are filter feeders, so they play a role. They're keystone species. They play a role in the ecology and the health of this area.
Really awesome. I like seeding the oysters. I learned a lot of things, especially that why they keep the buoys where the oysters are harvesting, why they keep them up so high. It was really inspiring.
There's a lot of things I learned, and there's a lot of things that are just as good as others. So I like throwing the clams out into the oysters out into the water and learning how to separate them.
I think the kids all learned a lot about the process of the oysters, and they got a chance to see the field, and the boat ride was fantastic. We had a little extra birding going on here, so I think we were very lucky with the weather and the crowd, and I just hope that they see there's still hope in the world and with the environment, and I try and, like I said, we were talking about the movie a minute ago, giving them things that have solutions and not just fear. We're going to see the movie Bag It, which will be September 11th at the museum.